Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to another Pokemon Movesets video. Today's video is going to be all about the Pokemon Lanturn, so let's get started like we always do by allowing me to shed some light on this Pokemon's typing, abilities, and stats. So to start things off, Lanturn is a water-electric type Pokemon introduced in Generation 2 that has access to 3 different abilities, the first of which being Volt Absorb, which is an ability that allows this Pokemon to be immune to electric type attacks, and also recover health whenever your opponent uses an electric type move against this Pokemon. As for its next ability, Illuminate, it unfortunately has absolutely no use in competitive battling, so we're going to skip over that for now. And for its last ability, Water Absorb, this is this Pokemon's hidden ability, and similarly to Volt Absorb, makes this Pokemon immune to water type attacks and recover health when your opponent uses a water type move against this Pokemon if it is possessing this ability. As for its stats, Lanturn's pretty average to low defensive stats, being base 58 physical defense and base 76 special defense, are significantly offset by its incredibly high base HP stat, being base 125, effectively allowing this Pokemon to take hits very well if you were to EV it to be some type of defensive wall or tank. As for its attacking stats though, it has a base 58 physical attack, which isn't too high, but still potentially usable because it does have access to a few interesting physical moves in the form of Sucker Punch as a transfer move from Gen 4, as well as Wild Charge, Waterfall, and Bounce. But the stat you're mainly going to be going with this Pokemon is going to be its special attack, being base 76, which still in itself isn't terribly high, but very usable, and also more so because of the fact that this Pokemon has access to a lot more special attacks than it does physical ones, giving it a lot of options on a special attacking set. And lastly, this Pokemon has a base 67 speed, which in itself isn't terribly high, but is still enough to outspeed a lot of other walls and allow this Pokemon to get free Volt Switches on them potentially, or burn them before they're able to attack, or even make use of on an offensive set if you were to make use of the move Agility, which this Pokemon does learn. So with that, let's get started by taking a look at the first set that I have for you in this video. So for this first set, we're going to begin by giving Lanturn either a timid nature to increase its speed but lower its physical attack, or a modest nature to increase its special attack but lower its physical attack. And for the ability, either going with Volt Absorb or Water Absorb, depending on which type of attack you would like Lanturn to be immune to. As for the EVs, we're going to put 252 into its special attack and its speed to max out both of those stats, and put the remainder 4 EVs into its special defense. And for the item, either going with a Life Orb to increase the damage of all of our attacks at the expense of losing 10% of our health each time we damage our opponent, an Expert Belt to increase the damage of super effective attacks used against our opponents, Choice Specs to lock us into one attack type for the remainder of the time we keep Lanturn in, but as a trade-off increasing the power of all of our special attacks by 1.5, or even running an air balloon as our item to allow us to levitate off the ground and make us immune to ground type attacks that would normally be super effective against this Pokemon until the balloon pops. As for the moves, the first one that we're going to go with on the set is either going to be Hydro Pump or Scald as our main stab water move. Hydro Pump obviously is the more powerful option, but only has 80% accuracy, whereas Scald has 100% accuracy, but is less powerful, but also does have that additional chance to burn our opponents when we use it. So either of these options is very viable in this slot. As for our next stab move in the form of our electric type attack, we're going to either run Thunderbolt or Volt Switch depending on how you want to use this Lanturn. Thunderbolt, again, obviously the more strong option, whereas Volt Switch allows us to potentially damage something and switch out to gain switch initiative, and I would highly recommend using this if you're going to run the Specs set over Thunderbolt personally. However, this can still be useful on a Life Orb, Expert Belt, or Air Balloon set if you'd like to. And for our last main attack of the set, going with Ice Beam to allow this Pokemon to have some good coverage against the grass type Pokemon that would be resistant to both your water and electric type stab. As for the last move though, this really is what determines how you are going to end up using this Lanturn. The first option in Agility will allow you to increase your speed by 2 stages, thus making Lanturn very fast and capable of sweeping teams. Whereas if you would like to use this Pokemon just for sheer coverage, running Hidden Power Fire is the best option in my opinion, mainly because the only real thing that you can't hit too hard with the 3 moves above it is Ferroseed or Ferrothorn, depending on where you're using this Pokemon, and Hidden Power Fire is able to reliably take care of that very easily. So that is what I would recommend as a last attack, but if you want to use this Pokemon as kind of a setup sweeper, running Agility with either of the 3 items other than Choice Specs is a really great way to make use of Lanturn's unique typing and stabs to sweep teams after it has acquired 1 stat boost in agility. As for this next moveset, we're going to start off by giving Lanturn a calm nature to increase its special defense but lower its physical attack, and then for the ability going with Volt Absorb. As to the EVs, we're going to put 164 into its HP and 236 EVs into its special defense to give it some nice special bulk, and then put the remainder 108 EVs into its speed to allow this Pokemon to outspeed Jolly Rhydon, which is apparently a really good idea always to use on a Lanturn set, so keep that in mind if you're trying to create some other type of set with this Pokemon, as that is some type of speed benchmark you want to reach. As to the item though, we're going to go with Leftovers on the set to allow this Pokemon to recover a little bit of HP at the end of a return. And for the moves, the first thing that we're going to go with is going to be Whirlpool, which is a move that will simultaneously trap our opponents, deal damage, and also deal damage at the end of every turn, thus whittling them down slowly. Now once we have the opponent trapped, the next thing we're going to want to do potentially is go for the move Soak, which is a very interesting move that doesn't get a ton of use but works amazingly on Lanturn, because what it does is it turns your opponent into a water type Pokemon. And this is again amazing because Lanturn has stab electric type attacks that will now be super effective against this water type Pokemon that you're now up against on your opponent's side of the field. So to make use of that, we're either going to use Discharge just for a powerful move with the potential to paralyze, or Volt Switch as a way to just soak something and then switch out and take it out potentially in the same turn, or just have Volt Switch on there to give you switch initiative if you don't anticipate being able to simultaneously use Soak and Whirlpool at the same time. It does require a little bit of setup, so keep that in mind, but if you are able to use it successfully, you're going to be doing a lot of damage to your opponent's Pokemon. And for the last move on the set, running Scald, just because it's Scald and it has a 30% chance to burn our opponents, which will be really great to help out the physical defense of this Pokemon because we are not running any physical defense EVs. We're running this mainly as a specially defensive Pokemon, so Scald burns will be very beneficial for allowing Lanturn to take physical hits if it's able to get one off. But overall, the purpose of this set is to trap something, turn into a water type, and then potentially kill it, but has some extra utility in the process through the use of the burns from Scald, switch initiative through Volt Switch, or potential paralysis and Discharge. As for this final set, we're going to start by giving this Pokemon a calm nature to increase its special defense but lower its physical attack, or a careful nature to increase this Pokemon's special defense but lower its special attack. And for the ability, going with Volt Absorb again, as well as the same EV spread and item choice as the previous set. The functionality of this set, however, is going to drastically change with the moves that we've selected here, and is primarily designed to be a Parafusion set with some added utility. So the first move that we're going to go with is going to be Substitute, to allow us to get behind a protective barrier to shield us from attacks and statuses while we try to confuse and paralyze our opponents. And to do that, we're first going to run Confuse Ray as our confusion move, and then either Thunder Wave or Discharge as a way of paralyzing our opponents. Thunder Wave obviously is guaranteed paralysis, whereas Discharge is an actual attacking move in that it does damage and also has a 30% chance to paralyze our opponents. So it's a little less reliable in the paralysis department, but does some damage as well, which could prove to be very useful as far as type coverage is concerned. And for the last move in this set, we're either going to run Scald or Waterfall, which might seem very strange to use a physical attack on this set, which is why I also recommended running the Careful Nature, but the main reason for even including Waterfall here is because it has a 20% chance to flinch our opponents, which in combination with Confuse Ray and paralysis from either Thunder Wave or Discharge will make it very, very difficult for your opponent to actually attack Lanturn. And this is something that's really cool and not a lot of Pokemon are able to do in the same way that Lanturn is. However, if you want to just stick to some more standard Lanturn things, Scald is definitely a very good option as well because it does have a 30% chance to burn your opponent, which on a Parafusion set is still very useful because there may be some things you'd rather burn than paralyze, but either way, Confuse Ray is still going to be very useful regardless of what you're up against. So either of those options is useful for your last move slot, and something that makes this Pokemon very unique as it is able to run such a difficult to deal with set that your opponent will definitely have trouble working around if you do get luck on your side. But anyways, everybody, that is it for this video. So as always, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lanturn video, and as always, take care, goodbye, and I will see you all next time.